So the science of meditation. During our short time together, I'm actually going to be offering a little bit more of a personal aspect to the science of meditation. As a long-time meditator, I've been meditating for 22 years. I have found that the empirical evidence and the clinical research and the science of meditation has been extremely important to my own journey and my own personal practice development over the last 2 decades. 10 years into my meditation practice and journey, I found myself actually in pre-med school. About 1.5 years into pre-med, I was really set to go to medical school to understand the biological effects of meditation and mindfulness. But 1.5 years into pre-medical school, I actually switched over to clinical research and started to conduct science on mindfulness, meditation, and stress reduction. After that, I found myself with the great honor and privilege, a part of Deepak Chopra's research team at the Chopra Foundation for 2 years. I then became the center director at the Aging, Metabolism, and Emotion Center at UCSF, where I collaborated and conducted clinical research on mindfulness, meditation, and stress reduction with some of the world's top health psychologists. As a young researcher in particular, longtime meditator, but a younger researcher, I remember when I began to understand the historical timeline of the science of meditation, this really helped me begin to deepen my own personal meditation practice. The first studies conducted on mindfulness and meditation happened in the 1960s. But fast forward to the 90s, we're talking about the 1990s here, the science of meditation, the field of the science of meditation began to take a look at the neuroscience of meditation. Researchers began to study the effects meditation and mindfulness have on the brain. They began to see that the structure, the actual physical structure of the brain can change through consistent meditation practice. They also found that there's an increase in executive functioning and there's an increase in neuroplasticity when one meditates consistently for a number of weeks. Then fast forward to the 2000s, researchers began to study the effects of meditation on our biology. They began to explore gene expression pathways. They began to explore the effects meditation has on our inflammatory pathways and our inflammatory expression as well. And they also began to take a look at how meditation affects our cell health and our cell aging. But then let's fast forward to the 2010s into present time. Here, scientists actually started to take a look at how meditation affects us and showing up in our external life, our outer lives. They started to begin to do research on whether meditation helps us show up in a more altruistic way with more pro-social behavior. They also took a look at our romantic relationships and our marital satisfaction. And the scientists also began to take a look at whether consistent meditation helps us feel more interconnected and more connected to our shared humanity. I find this to be so darn inspiring and motivating as a meditator myself, to know that the empirical evidence is there in a lot of the major areas around meditation practice. And there's this one story I wanted to share with us before we moved into a period of our own meditation time. And I think Dr. Sarin could tell that I was like really into meditation. I think he could tell that I just loved it. And the reason why I was there doing clinical research and a part of the lab was because I was a meditator, first and foremost. So Cliff shared this really impactful story with me about an early expedition that he was a part of with a group of Western scientists who were sent over to the foothills of the Himalayas in India to conduct some very initial research on how meditation was affecting these longtime yogis and practitioners in the local monasteries. And they have a monitor there that is demonstrating the brain waves to the group of monks in real time. One of the young monks raises his hand and asks the translator and asks Dr. Varela, can you tell us again what it is you're trying to study. What are you trying to research? And Dr. Varela responds back to the young monk and says, well, we're here to study the effects of meditation on your brains. As this is translated back to the group of young monks, and they understand what Dr. Varela had just said, they start to roar with laughter, they start to giggle, they start to talk amongst themselves, and then the same young monk who raised his hand to ask the question turns back to the translator and says, would you mind telling Dr. Varela and the scientists that they have this wrong? If they want to be studying the effects of meditation on the brain, then they need to put those EEG nodes right here. He pointed towards his heart. So this is the first time that Western science understood that from a traditional perspective, that meditators, and especially those in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, they think of the mind and the heart as the same thing, the same unified thing. As meditators, we can begin to live with what is known as chitta consciousness or chitta awareness, which translated from Sanskrit or from Tibetan Buddhism means mind-hearted or heart-minded. In other words, can we live and practice with a mind that is touched by the heart and by a heart that is touched by the mind? So the science of meditation helps us see it to believe it. However, right before we move into this short period of meditation that we'll arrive to together right now, I invite you to reflect right now, to pause and think. What do you already know deep down to be true? What do you already know deep down to be true? And maybe, especially today, what might you need to see in order to believe what it is you already know to be true?